The June 13th, 2024 Des Moines City Council business meeting is now called to order. Councilmember Grace Matsui will now lead us in the pledge. Please stand if you're able.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the record show that all council members are present. Do we have any correspondence that was not previously received by council?
No other correspondence, Mayor.
Thank you. So now it's time for comments from the public. And, she's going to wait for just a moment. Somebody's signing in. While that's happening, I'll just read the script for that. So it is time for comments from the public. If you're prepared to comment on either of the public hearing issues this evening, we've got a transportation improvement plan issue and an update on our fire codes. We will be asking you to save your comments until the public hearing time. So other than that, we ask that you would keep your comments respectful. Please recognize that any person speaking or acting in a disorderly manner or disruptive to the meeting will be removed. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and your city of residence when you come to the podium. So first up, we have Martha Hamilton.
Good evening, Council. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, thank you. Martha Hamilton, Zenith. I'm here to talk about housing and the comprehensive plan. To me, one of our goals should be to create the conditions for Des Moines homeowners to become part of the attainable housing solution for ADUs and cottages. I have a handout. You'll see the first page outlines the things that are really some of the biggest barriers for people doing ADUs in their backyards. One is utilities. If the comprehensive plan or the zoning requires people to hook in to the main utilities, it's cost prohibitive. If we allow people to hook in to the existing home utilities, it makes it possible. A lot of cities are doing that. It's also recommended in the Washington Department of Commerce ADU guidelines. If you haven't read those, I would recommend you do, both that and for middle housing. Great reading, good information, and you'll see a lot of what's going on in the city. Streamlining the permitting process is another. You'll see that second. They're also recommending ADUs by right, so that people don't have to go through a long process. It's just you have a right because you own a home and you have land to put ADUs. And then also, of course, the cottage selection process and creating more opportunities for people to have cost-effective ADUs or cottages on their property. For me, I think we need to get the unit cost installed down to $200,000 to make it effective for a small ADU. We're going to need the help of the council and of some changes in the comprehensive plan in order to be able to do that. I have a couple of attachments. One is a visual. For those of you that like to have more of a photo, this gives you an idea. It's just an example of my property. The next one is a diagram. You've seen it before, but the next one's really interesting. This is an entity that I found. It's called Villa. San Jose, California had put it on there pre-approved, so I found them and I discovered that they actually will price out the ADU online. So of course I did that to see what it looked like. And I think you'll be interested to see what the site work costs are for a very basic, no improvements ADU. The site work costs are really substantial. And so that's where we can help with the comprehensive plan in getting the costs down. This is where the permitting, what we allow regarding options in housing, what's required for site preparation, and the utilities will make all the difference on whether these ADUs can be cost effective or not. And if they're not cost effective, people won't put them in. And we all keep reading about the housing shortage, and so we know we need lots of help from lots of different directions, including homeowners that want to be part of this solution. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martha. Next up, Azia Hagos, Director Hagos from Highline School District. She is our representative, or in our district.
Good evening, everyone. City Council members, Deputy Mayor, Mayor Buxton, thanks for kind of introducing me in that kind of way. I am Azia Hagos, School Board Director for Highline Public Schools, specifically representing District 5, so Des Moines here. I just wanted to say, well, going on 17 years as a resident of this city, a very proud member of Des Moines. In fact, my son is watching the construction happen at the playground over here in next to the field house, and every week he wants to go and watch the construction and how far it's coming along, and I think he's more excited about the construction than the playground itself, but he is ready for that to be completed so he can hang out and play. My kids are really happy to be a part of Des Moines as well. I just wanted to say we had a community conversations event last week at Mount Rainier High School, and let's see, we had, I want to say, well over 100 attendees, including the superintendent, some cabinet members, but more importantly also our families and community members and some of the administrations from Mount Rainier High School. The community conversations was open to our own residents, our families, to come in and have conversations with us, provide some feedback, hear back from us in particular as well. We did listening sessions here in Des Moines about, I want to say, almost about 2 years ago now, we've done some work since that last listening session, updating our strategic plan, looking at key measures and indicators of success for academic and social development and college and career readiness, and we circled back to that to open up the conversations to say, here's where we're at, what would you like to share with us? And so those conversations were quite meaningful. I'm glad we had them. It was about an hour and a half, and people still did not want to leave after 8 o'clock. They had more to say, so we stuck around for quite some time to hear from our people. And I just wanted to say that, in particular, it's important that folks know that these types of pieces of information, the insights and recommendations that came from those conversations, will go back and have gone back to our board team, and those voices are the cornerstone in providing what we work in terms of our policies and initiatives that informs our work. So it is crucial that those folks came forth and had some things to say, and we still open up those conversation lines if there are others who have things that they'd like to comment as well. So just an update from what's been happening so far in terms of my representation here as your school board director for Des Moines, and more to come.
Thank you so much. I always appreciate your work and your connectivity. I appreciate seeing you around town. Thank you, Azia. Next up, Eric Matthews.
Hi there, Mayor Buxton, Deputy Mayor, members of the council, thank you for your time tonight. My name is Eric Matthews, and I am the Librarian and Information Services Manager for the Des Moines and Woodmont Libraries, which means I just get to support our wonderful staff and the librarians and the programs and outreach they do in our communities. And I'm just here today to share an update on some of the work we have been doing. The mission of the King County Library System is to inspire the people of King County to succeed through ideas, interaction, and information. Our branches are busy branches. I've provided a handout here that shows some statistics, but just to give you a little bit of information, from January through May, we've had over 100,000 physical items and 50,000 items, digital items checked out between both of our branches, and over about 13,000 computer sessions. So we are pretty bustling and vibrant spaces. Day in and day out, our dedicated staff at the Des Moines and Woodmont Libraries work to fulfill our mission, and when partnering with community members and organizations, we develop impactful programming and services to support all in our community. For instance, one such partnership is working with Monica of the GPS team and the Des Moines Police Department. We hold a monthly resource fair for those experiencing or close to experiencing homelessness in our libraries. And so far this year, we have had over 130 individuals come to get connected to services provided by our partners. On one such occasion, we had a young pregnant woman who came in looking for resources. She had no insurance, was living in a car, didn't have a phone. In the span of 2 hours, our community partners signed her up for insurance, provided her with a phone on site, and helped her with hotel housing vouchers. So the resource fairs are incredibly valuable to create access and to reduce barriers to our unhoused and under-resourced families in our communities, and are a demonstration of how organizations can support each other and our communities in partnership. Our partnerships and support don't just come from organizations, but also volunteers that dedicate their time and expertise to our communities. During the school year at the Des Moines Library, we have our weekly in-person study zone and reading buddy programs, where 6 volunteers dedicated over 200 hours and assisted over 240 young patrons in supporting and strengthening their early literacy and education skills. And we're also excited to announce that we'll be expanding our Reading Buddies program to the Woodmont Library in September. And we can't mention volunteers without thanking the wonderful support of our community members who make up our Friends of the Library groups. They fundraise year-round to support our staff and library programs, including the Woodmont Seed Library and Community Garden, which has been pretty successful. In our libraries, you'll also find that we provide a wide range of materials for our communities to choose to engage in, supporting our value of intellectual freedom. This year, we launched the Freedom to Read campaign, which focuses on our community being able to find something that speaks to them in our materials, programs, and branches. Our summer reading program is another initiative to support reading for all ages throughout the months of June through August. While it doesn't officially begin until Monday, next Monday, you can get your reading logs now and begin to participate. The artwork was designed by local artist Kate Endel. We also offer a variety of fun and engaging summer reading programs to bring the community together, including a summer reading kickoff party at the Woodmont Library on June 26th. We'll have some community art projects that you can participate in and a magic show as well. And then the Des Moines Library will be hosting a summer reading finale on August 22nd, but you can always find more events on our online calendar by visiting kcls.org. Now, I'd like to close tonight by mentioning that as a library system, we strive towards inclusion, providing programs and services and spaces that foster connection, community, and belonging. One of the ways that we do that is through our goal of providing meaningful connections through our programs or our services, such as our language line translation service that will connect our community members to over 240 different languages for translation services to help with their library and information service needs. But also by creating meaningful connections, again, it's not only about what we do, but what we do in partnership with others in our communities. And when I mentioned to our colleagues that we would be speaking to the council tonight, they wanted me to share how impactful it was for our patrons to have Mayor Buxton in the libraries for her Chat with the Mayor opportunities. We've received such a wonderful response for our patrons about what it meant for them to be able to connect with the mayor. And we'd like to thank you for partnering with us and your contribution to make the Des Moines and Woodmont Libraries a safe, welcoming space of belonging and inclusion for all in our community. And so council, thank you again for your time tonight, and we look forward to seeing all of you at the library. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. That was really a kick to be able to go up there. I so appreciate if you just get a chance, go online and see what they've got going. The one day I went in there, I wasn't able to they have a big private space where you can conduct classes. They had a bunch of accountants in there doing tax returns for citizens for free. All you had to do is make an appointment. Can you believe that your library system offers stuff like that? So I ended up meeting out in the open area. It was very, very fun. Thank you so much for what you do. I hope you guys just on a lark decide to check out King County Libraries and what's going on just here in our own community. It's really great. Thank you, Eric. Next up, I have Steve Shamblin.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. I'm Steve Shamblin. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm with the Des Moines Waterland Pride Organization. I'm here tonight for 2 reasons. First, I want to say thank you. I was here a few weeks ago when this council adopted and made the proclamation for Pride Month. Sorry. As a member of the LGBTQ plus community, I appreciate the initiative and affirmation that the city has made about recognizing and celebrating diversity. I'm sure that you all received some counter comments. I know how that goes, but I wanted to assure you that there were folks that appreciated it. I also want to thank you for flying the progressive pride flag outside. In June 2022, I made my first trip to Des Moines. My husband had recently been appointed as pastor at Des Moines United Methodist Church. And we came down 216, turned onto 11th to head to the church, and the first thing we saw was the pride flag. We both looked at each other and were thankful that this was going to be our new home. And it's with pride that we both call Des Moines home now. Second, I wanted to invite you to the second annual Des Moines Waterland Pride Festival. It will be held June the 22nd and 23rd. On the 22nd, we will start the day with the park run. We will also have a booth at the farmer's market. And during the day, there will be a scavenger hunt amongst merchants who are hiding pride-painted rocks. And when folks find them, they will receive a token that they can redeem at the festival on Sunday, the 23rd. Like last year, the Pride Fest will be held at Des Moines United Methodist Church. The day will start with a Pride worship at 10 a.m., followed by the festival with vendor booths, drag show, food trucks, all starting at 11 a.m. and ending at 3 p.m. This is a family-friendly event for folks of all ages, and we invite the community to come join us for the festivities at Des Moines United Methodist. Again, thank you all for the work you do. Happy Pride.
Thank you, Steve. Next up, Alina Rogers. And, okay, there it is.
Council, my name's Alina Rogers. I live in Des Moines, and on April 11th, 2022, I was raped in my bed by a man who I had gone to the Des Moines police about several times. In one incident, I went to have a no-contact order enforced, and Sergeant Penny told me they didn't do anything about contact that was made over 4 hours ago. That's not the law. He then told me that he couldn't find my no-contact order that was issued by CTAC after he was arrested in the system. I brought back a certified copy. He said that didn't work. The RCWs clearly say that it is. I have been through hell with this. I am a fighter, but I didn't fight back that night because my son was on the other side of the wall, and I didn't want to cause him the trauma of either a huge scene or finding his mom dead. And that next morning on April 12th, I went up here to 11th Avenue, and instead of going to the police station, do you know where I went? I went to the library, and I got a book called Stop Signs, Recognizing, Avoiding, and Escaping Abusive Relationships, because I don't have any faith in the Des Moines police anymore. That is just one example. Another example of how everything has gone is when they finally did charge him, and they wouldn't even let me come in for a report initially, because the detective didn't understand how to initially read the protection order that I had obtained, and then he couldn't find it in the system, and then he said it wasn't served until this date, even though the King County Prosecutor's Office emailed him and said, you are incorrect, fix your system, and they refused. But suddenly when I got an advocate from the King County Sexual Assault Resource Center, they let me in to take a report in November of 2022. And in July of 2023, they finally decided to charge him. And trial was set for March 28th of this year. And Jacob Gates called me not even 24 hours before, told me he was dismissing the charges with prejudice. Why? And I was on speaker when I took this call, so I have a witness, because he thought my mother was lying to him, my almost 80-year-old mother, who had to recall things from almost 2 years ago, prior to this, who had no idea that the person who raped me and was stalking me and had assaulted me and been arrested was going to be in the meeting. Did you know it's prosecutorial misconduct if a prosecutor were to call a defendant a liar? And the ethical violation and the ethical guidelines say you must treat the witnesses and the victims the same. This is what I've experienced. He dropped it less than 20 hours before, led me up through all of this, having to prepare to go see my rapist. He didn't call my advocate as was required. He had a preliminary hearing to decide. He had plenty of time. The interview with my mother that he so all of a sudden questioned, here's what I think. Des Moines bungled the case so much that he was advised not to move on. Thank you for your time. Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Okay. So is there anybody who came to the meeting tonight expecting to give public comment but did not realize they needed to sign in order to do so? All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Next up, Next up, we have committee chair reports, and we'll begin with Chair Mahoney reporting out on a couple of items. So first up's the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. On June 6th, we held our monthly Finance Committee, give you a high-level review. We overviewed the Parks and Recreation finances. Bonnie Wilkins has done strong work there. She continues to narrow the gap. As we all know, and some of you may not know, there's been a revenue shortfall. It's been subsidized by the general fund. She's working to make it break even. She's got some plans. I'm excited to see the work, and there's been progress, and I'm looking forward to more. I think the committee was impressed. We also looked at the 2023 annual finance statement that goes to the state auditor. It's a process that happens every year. I think that Jeff has done a great job to prepare for that. All municipalities face a state audit every year, and they like to pick different subjects to review, so we're eager to see what the results of that are, but I think we'll fare well. We looked at the 5-year forecast. Particularly, we looked at 2 examples of if the levy were to pass and if the levy weren't to pass, and where we would be. And I can tell you that we hope the levy passes, because we have to basically find $4 million a year. The city's actively searching for about $1 million and hoping and looking and doing 2 strategies. One, if the levy passes or doesn't. But it was interesting. Basically, if the levy doesn't pass in 5 years, our shortfall is over 40% of below the reserve. So it's quite astonishing. We also saw the general fund report. Revenues for year to date through April were up 5% and expenditures were down 13%. My hat's off to our city manager, Tim George, as he has done a really good job to keep cost in line, especially during this tough time. And we also saw the May 24 sales tax report year to date. And sales tax is down 3%, which has some concern. It has come back a little bit, but it's one of our mainstays. For those of you that may not be familiar with our finances, we're a 3-legged stool primarily. There are some other sources of revenue, but it's property tax, which is capped. There's utility taxes, and then, of course, the sales and use tax, which is the more business we have, the more money we make in that particular avenue. So watching that and seeing the trace, particularly from the side effects of COVID that we're still trying to dig out of. So that was the Finance Committee. And then today we held the Transportation Committee. I'm not going to go too much into the Transportation Improvement Plan because there's a presentation today, but I will say this, that the project represented a thorough, over the city, fair disbursement of projects. I think they're all worthy. The ones that are close term, and I'm talking things from 2024 to 2026, are obtainable. Our Public Works Department has done a really good job of finding grants when possible, particularly at Safe Routes to School, and examples like that, or trails like the Barnes Creek Trail. So I think that they are, from what I understand, they're going to get a Public Works Director in the near future, but they have been taxed. They also have one guy out on paternity leave, but they have done an excellent job, and so I'm really impressed with what they've done. And then we looked over some of the capital improvement projects. First of all, the good news is we had some utility issues on 24th. Those seem to be resolved. The Public Works Department will be meeting with the contractor to get that work. Most of the construction will be done this year, with probably the second paving happening in the spring of 2025. There'll also be this summer, there'll be arterial paving off 16th from 250th to 260th, and down in Redondo and on Pack Highway. There'll be some communication about those. For those folks that like to run through Redondo, they'll probably be wanting to choose alternate routes during that time, because it'll be reduced to 1 lane and so forth. But and they could take a week or 2 weeks to do. Also, Pack Highway will have some overlay as well. So as I jokingly said, folks that are passing through our town might want to take I-5. So that more to come later. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And any other regional committees?
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, just the PSRC, Transportation Policy Board, they had a meeting today. What we discussed is finance strategy overall of the regional transportation plan and where money is going to be allocated in some of those initial discussions. One of them interesting is we continue to push the ferry and some revenue sources for that.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate that. So I am going to redo the order here for those of you looking on the agenda. So next up, I'm going to ask for Chair Harris to report out on the Environment Committee tonight.
Yeah, so we had an annual presentation on the Public Works groundwater remediation. We have a number of 15, I believe it is, wells in the area which they've had problems over the years with benzene and so on. And we keep getting near the end, we think, of remediation, and then they come back, but we think we're getting close now. We had an update on the capital improvement plan, and you'll hear people talk about capital improvement plan in every committee, but there are different projects that have different emphases, and these were items that are of concern regarding stormwater and including Redondo and Fish Passage. There's a pretty exciting thing coming on the radar. We hope to get a grant that will help coho salmon filtering out. There's a particular pollutant that is it just kills the little baby fish, and that would be wonderful if we get that. We had an update on the SeaTac Airport Roundtable. You'll usually hear us refer to it as START. Everything having to do with airports is an acronym, and it was very nice to have the two community representatives attend and report back. Boy, this is the most hopeful I've been about START since it got going, I don't know, 6 years ago now, 7 years ago. Basically, the problem with the START is it's information asymmetry, and we have the same problem with electeds, is that people come into it every couple of years. It's a fire hose of technical information, and it just gets overwhelming, and it can create the sense that nothing is possible. You know, when you're just being overwhelmed with acronyms and just stuff. But they are enthusiastic, and they ask some really good pointed questions, and it's the first time since I've been watching that they recognized that each city, when it comes to the airport, has different interests. Frankly, we're not all in this together, and it was just really great to hear that you know, they have intuited a lot of the stuff that we need to be looking at. So that's a good start there, no pun. We also had 2 public comments, which were also very good. One of them regarding the aspects of making it easier to set up ADUs. It really is the purview of the Environment Committee to be thinking about how we can make hookups easier, and the woman did a very good job of research, and I hope we can look into that as part of our comp plan. And I think that's about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Next up, we have a report out of the Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee, which technically I'm the chair, but I was ill last week, and so my cohort over here, Vice Chair, Councilmember Grace Matsui, took over for me, so I'm going to hand the baton to her.
Thank you very much. Yes, on June 6th, we had a meeting of the Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee. which involved a couple of items, and one of which was newer to me, so I found it extremely interesting. And that was a presentation by our crisis response specialist, Monica Lara. Am I saying that correctly, hopefully? No. AJ is smiling, but not sure. Okay. And then she talked a little bit about her work as an outreach specialist with our Getting People Services team, and including some quarterly statistics from earlier this year, and how many contacts that she's had around the community, what kind of mental health check-ins, assisting with patrol and follow-up, which I think is one of the essential functions that I have a lot of hope for with her work, that frees up our police officers and sergeants to have a civilian go ahead and try and connect folks with services, do a little tiny bit of case management that she is able to do, and take that off the plate of the uniform officers. She also talked very much about her partnership with Eric and those homeless resource fairs that he had mentioned in his public comment. And I will remind folks that her position in this program is really helpful. She shared a very similar story about encountering a young man who was living out of his car, having fled an abusive home life. He had gotten a job in this area but was unable to put together the amount of money that you need to rent an apartment, that first, last, and deposit, which can be many thousands of dollars. And one of the stories that she shared with us was connecting him with services so that he could get out of his car, off the street, and into some sort of housing situation. Because here's a person who is doing the right thing, is working full-time, but just can't scrape together that level of resource. But I will remind folks, and I kind of got off track there, that this is a position that's funded through a limited time. And so we hope that this kind of model, which has seen success in many large cities, a dual response or a third response out to deal with folks who are in crisis or in need of services, is really, I think, one of the future services that cities will begin to offer around the country. And I hope that it's something that we can continue with our support as voters and citizens. Let's see, and then we also talked a little bit, Chief Cooey talked a little bit about staffing. I understand there are folks who continue to apply and go through the backgrounding process here at Des Moines PD. We had someone start a couple of days ago, I believe, and they anticipate that they'll continue to have folks come through, and we're very fortunate that we are able to be an attractive place to work here at Des Moines PD. And that concludes my report.
And an excellent report it was. She did a great job, anyway. And it's super short notice last week for both of my colleagues here. So next up, report out on the Public Issues Committee from Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Public Issues Committee is a subcommittee of the Sound Cities Association that deals with some of the bigger, broader issues that are happening in the county. Sound Cities Association exists independent of King County and independent of Seattle, which are the two 800-pound gorillas in the county. And so we formed our own 800-pound gorilla with all of the other cities. It's never quite a perfect fit, but nonetheless, that's what we did. We discussed briefly the Crisis Care Center implementation plan. As I reported a while ago, there was funding available for crisis care centers. There are going to be 5 different crisis care centers throughout the county, one of them particular to juveniles. And there were some questions about implementation. 2 major changes, well, sort of major changes. One is that they've expanded the number of providers that can be operating particular facilities. There was a pretty tight limitation on it because they didn't want one provider coming in and taking over them all, but it may be that, you know, in 2 or 3 different places, that's the best provider to do that. And so they've expanded that a little bit. The other is a little vaguer, and that is that the county executive, in cases of emergencies, can approve a center or funding for something, and yet there wasn't a good definition of what those emergencies were. The only example that I got last night was if there's a facility that's just too big beyond the needs of the crisis care center that is going to go in there, but otherwise it fits, that would be considered an exigent circumstances, and they could go ahead and purchase it and do that. But I thought that was an odd way to approach an exigency. The second issue that we dealt with were the PIC operating policies, and I don't want to bore you with all of that, but it's essentially how the committee works. The next issue was the Metro Free Youth Transit Passes, which are going to be distributed again this summer. And essentially, where there was a fair amount of grant money available if you made transit free to people under the age of 18. And so there are 3 ways to get that. You can show a student ID, you can have the Youth Orca card, or you can just get on. Just board the bus, and if you're asked for your ticket, you presumably have to show that you're under 18, and then you can get on the bus. But people under 18 will have that as an option to get around. The other issue that we did is there's a crisis in Tukwila right now in a church that had agreed to take on some asylees, people who from other countries who had applied for asylum here, and that has now been distributed far and wide that this church will take you if you're an asylee, and they're looking at 60, 70,000 people that they're putting up in a church parking lot and in the church itself. It's costing Tukwila an enormous amount of money. The PIC, well, actually, Sound Cities Association is trying to put together a statement that takes into consideration all of the cities around that are dealing with asylees, and really there are 3 of them. The 3 cities most affected are Kent, Burien, and Tukwila, all here in the south end of town. It's just not as big an issue in other parts of the county, and so there has been a statement that's been drafted. It's gone back and forth. I've sent it to the city manager and the mayor, and I believe she sits on the board of directors, and so hopefully there will be a good statement that comes out of that into what we expect from both the feds and the state in dealing with people who are coming here and seeking asylum, but have no way to support themselves when they're here. So, and lastly, we had an update on the various ballot measures and levies that are going on. Des Moines is not the only community in King County that is running a public safety levy in August. There are a handful that are, and more coming that are expected in November. And then lastly was kind of the fun part, and that is that all the cities got to share the events for the summer. You know, that was kind of fun to hear what other cities are doing. Some are doing a lot, some aren't doing a whole lot of things. They have one big event, and that's what they do for the summer. Des Moines is one of the more active cities. I really was happy. We're really pleased to see that not only is the city sponsoring a number of events, but there are private groups in town that are sponsoring events, not the least of which is a Juneteenth celebration on the 19th at Creole Soul, and about the Pride events that are planned for later on in the month. And those are private events that are being put on, but they are community events. And we appreciate that. So there are other things coming up from the SCA stuff, networking and summer socials and things like that, and then we adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. All right, moving on to the next segment of the meeting, we'll have the city manager's report, and I turn that over to City Manager Tim George.
Thank you, Mayor. I think my big news of the week is the announcement that we made yesterday that the city is hiring a new chief of police, and that is Chief Ted Bowe. He resigned his position from the King County Sheriff's Office on Tuesday, and where he served as the chief of the Burien Police Department. He is going to be going through the background process, which is required by state law, with an anticipated start date of August 16th. But as we move forward to that date, there will be opportunities for the council and the public to meet him. He's very excited to get started. I'm very excited for the community to meet him. I think one thing that we saw from the community response in the last 24 hours since we made that announcement is that it has been very positive. And I think if there's anyone that's not quite sure, once they meet him, they'll be very satisfied. I think this is going to be a great hire, and he's going to do a lot for our department. Next, we have a couple presentations. So if I could ask Dorsal Plants to come forward. He is the program coordinator for South King Housing and Homeless Partners, and he's going to be giving a presentation that relates to item number 4 on the consent calendar.
Thank you so much. Like you said, my name is Dorsal Plants, just like the fin on a fish, and I am the program coordinator for SKIP. And tonight I have the honor of presenting the 2025 work plan and budget for SKIP. Normally this would be something that would be presented by Claire Vanessa Goodwin, the SKIP executive manager, but she is out on maternity leave, and I'm happy to report she did deliver a beautiful baby boy last month, and they're both doing really well. So SKIP was formed in 2019 as part of an interlocal agreement between several South King County cities and King County to work on issues of housing in the South King County region. Currently, SKIP has 12 member jurisdictions, which you can see here on the slide, and Des Moines is represented on the SKIP Executive Board by Mayor Tracy Buxton. The SKIP mission is South King County jurisdictions working together and sharing resources to create a coordinated, comprehensive, and equitable approach to increasing housing stability, reducing homelessness, and producing and preserving quality, affordable housing in South King County. Even though the SKIP Executive Board adopted the SKIP 2025 work plan and budget, it is still part of the interlocal agreement that we come out to each of the member jurisdictions' legislative body and seek their approval as well. Here you can see the 2025 work plan development process. It reflects the goals and priorities of the SKIP Executive Board and was developed with the work of the SKIP Advisory Board and the staff work group. The staff work group is made up of planners from each of the member jurisdictions. The development took place over 3 months, and it began back in February with a survey that was issued to the Executive Board and to the Advisory Board. And those surveys developed an initial draft that the staff working group reviewed. Their feedback was incorporated into the work plan, and then it went before the Executive Board for their review. We took their feedback and we developed a finalized draft that was then presented to the SKIP Executive Board, or the SKIP Advisory Board and our staff worker group for one last presentation, and then it was adopted by the SKIP Executive Board on April 19th. So we are here at the final step, which is seeking the adoption by our member city councils, and that's what brings me here before you this evening. The 4 goals of the SKIP work plan remain the same from 2024, and they are funding the expansion and preservation of affordable housing, developing policies to expand and preserve affordable housing, serving as an advocate for South King County, and managing the operations and administration. Each goal in the work plan has a corresponding action that supports the goal, and each of these goals also has an indicator to measure the progress of which we are working towards these goals. The full work plan, including the action items and indicators, should be in the agenda packet this evening. The total SKIP operating budget is $468,237 for 2025. Regarding the revenues, the SKIP's operating budget is funded solely from SKIP member contributions that are based on population tiers. No member jurisdiction moved up in population tier this year, and the Executive Board did adopt in July of 2021 a 15% increase in member contributions through 2026. Regarding expenses, salaries and benefits are proposed to increase by 5%, and IT services will increase by 11%. The advisory board compensation, travel, and supplies will remain the same, but you will note that there is an increase in the professional services line item, and this is consistent with the legal assistance needed for the development of the Housing Capital Fund contracts and also for third-party construction reviews of the Housing Capital Fund applications. SCIP continues to spend down the cost savings from the first 2 years to balance additional contribution increases for members. Lastly, on the budget, the Executive Board recommended including the spend down of interest earnings accrued primarily from the Housing Capital Fund contribution. For example, the City of Des Moines' Housing Capital Fund contribution from 2019 to 2023 earned $2,534 in accrued interest. To spend the interest earning requires the approval of each SCIP member with allocated accrued interest. With the adoption of the 2025 SCIP work operating budget, which incorporates the interest earnings into the operating fund balance, the City Council is providing authorization for SCIP to use those funds towards the operating budget. These funds will assist in future years should there be an economic recession and members choose not to increase membership dues. This slide shows the SCIP population tiers established in the ILA and the member contribution by year that incorporates the 15% increase each year. A caveat to this table is the 2026 figures. If there are any interest in exploring additional staff capacity or taking on new work for SCIP, there may be a need to adjust these contributions, but if that were to occur, that would be a conversation that would take place next year. This table shows the State Office of Financial Management population data from 2021 to 2023 for each member jurisdiction. For King County, you'll note that we only have the estimate for the entire unincorporated King County, which that population is larger than the unincorporated South King County population. For the 2025 budget, the 2023 population data was used to establish where the cities fall. And the 2024 population estimates will not come out until June 28. Again, no member jurisdiction changed population tier this year, and as you can see, we are still seeing growth here in South King County. Here is the projected budget from 2024 to 2026. This assumes no new major activities or expenses. You can see that with the incorporation of the interest earnings into the operation fund balance, it provides additional support as SCIP works towards aligning revenues and expenses. Des Moines member contribution for 2025 will be $13,118. In conclusion, per the requirement of the interlocal agreement between Des Moines and SCIP, SCIP is seeking your support to adopt the 2025 work plan and budget. And at this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from council members? Councilmember Mahoney.
This was a good, excellent report, Dorsal, and I'm still trying to get used to that. Your mom not like you or something, man? You know?
I'm actually the third, believe it or not.
Really?
It's a series of not liking.
It's a family name. Anyway, you know, you talk about what it costs and how much money we do, but I think what's important for the public is can you talk about some of the accomplishments that you guys have had over the last few years and why we do this?
Certainly, and thank you. So over the last 2 years since we first began the Housing Capital Fund, SCIP is committed to 550 affordable housing units across South King County, including the Victorian Place 2 rehabilitation project that, as I understand, is either about to begin or has already begun. And so that's 550 units of affordable housing that allow our neighbors to stay here in our communities or new families to come and join us in such a beautiful environment. In addition to that, most recently, over the course of about 4 to 6 months, the Sokeho Group, which is a group of South King County planners that gets together, we met multiple times in a month to develop a sub-regional preservation strategy to really look at the preservation needs of South King County. And one of the things I think that appeals the most to the SCIP approach is rather than it being a directive or a list of instructions, it is what one of our planners has described as its cookbook. It's an opportunity for each of the South King County cities to review the policies that are being suggested by SCIP, determine what works best for their community, and implement those to help address the housing crisis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Harris.
You may want to put on your earmuffs but I would just say, on a positive note to all my colleagues, the presentations at your meetings are outstanding. One can obtain an extremely thorough understanding of all of the challenges of building housing and improving our community and building strong towns. However, it's, to use the words of my predecessor in this seat, too slow. That has nothing to do with you, sir. So I would encourage everyone to audit these meetings to learn more about it. But in terms of actually accomplishing the extremely noble goals, it's a drop in the bucket. And so I watch these things and I see that gulf between what we're actually doing and the wonderful opportunities that you present. And I take a migraine pill. Thank you.
Any other questions? Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Yeah, to kind of increase my understanding and everybody else's understanding of what it is that you deliver. You say it's a cookbook, and I like that analogy. So we can pick out, whether we want a spicy chili or not. But, there are a lot of different ways to go about affordable housing. We heard a presentation earlier tonight on ADUs, asking for some amendments. Have you been involved in developing a uniform plan that cities can adopt or anything like that concerning ADUs or other kinds, other things that the cities can do to respond within their city limits to, make more affordable housing that's at that level?
Yes, sir. That is definitely one of the directions that SCIP hopes to and continues to work in. We have not necessarily taken up the ADU issue specifically, but we have been working to support each of the member cities along their comp plan development. And with some of the changes that the legislature has made in the last few years, ADUs are definitely one of the primary conversation when it comes to the comp plan updates that are going on right now. But that is definitely something that SCIP is continuing to move into. Is we've done preservation and we'll now move on to one of our next topics.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and if I can ask a different question, there's a King County entity, the Regional Homelessness Authority. What is your interaction with that entity, which frankly has just been struggling to figure out what they are and what they want to do? Has there been much interaction? It sounds like there might be some overlap in purpose, but without the local focus that you provide. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, so KCRHA and SCIP have regular communication and conversation, but it is one of those conversations that I think is continuing to evolve. At our July Executive Board meeting, there will be a chair-directed conversation on the topic of homelessness, which will kind of look at what the, as some of us have joked, the second H in SCIP, kind of what that means and how it relates. I would say one of the ways that we've really supported KCRHA in the last few years is really just getting the housing units, in the production line. My background is in providing housing services, and no matter how good of the case management team I managed was or was not, without the housing stock, there simply was nowhere for us to do the work to assist. And so I think at least right now, SCIP being focused on getting more housing in South King County enables our service providers, including KCRHA, to do their work better.
Any other questions? Well, I have a couple, Dorsal, just to showcase a little bit. Could you, so you said it was 550,000 units so far, or no, how many units did you say?
It's over 550, give or take.
550 units. And Do you remember off the top of your head how much money has passed through the SCIP contract process into affordable housing since we've been able to do that?
So we are still, good question, we are still in the process of finalizing some of the contracting, which is partly on hold because of the maternity leave. But we are committed to, over the 2 years, and I'd be happy to give the exact figure, but I believe it's a little over $10 million that we've invested in affordable housing in just the 2 years. And so being the optimistic that I am, in another 2 years, potentially we've doubled that to 1,000 and $2 million invested in our community, and potentially will continue to grow from there.
Excellent. So I think the point that I wanted to make in regard to productivity for SCIP is what you're seeing is the entire, for now, since Claire is not there, you're seeing the entire staff for SCIP right now, and he's doing a fantastic job. And SCIP has a lot of tasks right now, just under the affordable housing portion of their name. And we do kind of like he joked, we would like to continue to grow into our name. It's a relatively new organization when you're talking about the age of organizations regionally. So there's a big learning curve, lots of networking that needs to be done, lots of policy work that needs to be done. And so Claire and Dorsal have done a fantastic job. When you talk about forwarding that millions of dollars into the South County region and 550 units supported in 2 years for taking this conglomerate, that's fantastic work. And we really are opening that homelessness part of our name up. We have already voted as an executive board to kind of pursue that. So as we continue to grow, and then in regard to sometimes the speed, I think part of the speed issue has to do with where our affordable housing funding goes. If it goes to new construction, that is just slow, 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 period, no matter where you are. But one thing I appreciated about what Dorsal talked about Victorian Place, the reason he mentioned that is because that project is in our city. And it was a rehab project, which means immediately, right? We made that decision, and that is immediate action. So we were able to take our allocation and go directly into action on that. So that was super fast. So it kind of depends on, new construction is always going to be slow. You can allocate it, 2 years ago and still haven't spent it yet. So anyway, I appreciate the work and all points made. Great. And gosh, thanks for being here tonight, Dorsal.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to visit the city.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, back to you, Tim.
All right, thank you. Next, we have our finance director, Jeff Friend, who's going to give us our fourth quarter financial report from 2023.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council, members of the public. And I'll get started when the slides get up there. Okay, so this is the fourth quarter report, and usually when we do a fourth quarter report, we don't really talk about the specific last 3 months of the year as much as we just talk about the year, looking back on what happened during that period. So we'll start off with the general fund. The general fund revenue and expenditures both came in under budget. The revenue unfortunately came under budget, but revenue was about $24.9 million. Expenditures exceeded that by about 26.7. So net loss of $1.755 million in the general fund for 2023. Talking about the fund balance, because that's an important number for the city, as by code, we want to have a 16.67% of our operating expenditures reflected in the fund balance. The fund balance is the total net position of a governmental fund. It's essentially the difference between assets and liabilities. So the ending fund balance for 2023 was $4,671,467. That's equivalent to 17.5% of operating expenditures, which were that $26,627,854. That's $187,604 above the minimum requirement. The minimum requirement, the 16.67%, was almost 4.5 million, so the 4.483. So for a while, it looked like we weren't going to reach that 16.67, but we did end up at 17.5. To look at a 10-year trend of the general fund's fund balance going back to 2014, the blue line represents the fund balance. The green line represents that threshold of the 16.67%. So we always want to see that blue line above the green line going back to 2014. I believe those are referred to as the dark days when we were near bankruptcy. So you can see that's when this policy was actually implemented, was after that time period. So that's why you see that blue, really blue, low blue line in 2014 through 2017. You can see recovery from that situation. And then 2018, 2019, things stabilized. Then the pandemic hits in 2020. The city received some one-time money from the federal government. 2022, that's when we have inflation and when the one-time money starts to run out. And now you see, it's like those lines missed each other, and now they just want to, hang out together in 2023. But seriously, though, that shows the situation the city is in, is that we're very close to the 16.67% threshold. We're going to look at some revenue categories and what's happened in the general fund in 2023. Our top revenue source, of course, is property tax. We've been talking a lot about property tax this year. And one of the things that we've said is how it's capped at 1% from what was collected the prior year. So this graph demonstrates that 1% growth in general. And in 2023, we collected nearly 5.5 million, just a hair under 5.5 million in property tax. Utility taxes increased in 2023, a little bit over the prior year, and we collected $4.2 million in utility taxes. This schedule shows different utilities and the amount that they brought in. Only one declined, which was solid waste. Telephone surprisingly increased, because you never see that, and I'm really kind of annoyed that it did that, but won't complain. And then the swim utility taxes also increased. Generally, if a year to year the percent difference is below 5 up or down, it's not really considered material. And I'd say about solid waste, it was $532,000 in 2022. The years before that, it was not above 500,000. It was in the 400,000s for the 2 years prior, and the year prior to that was in the 300,000. So it's in the same ballpark, even though it did dip down just less than $20,000. Sales taxes, regular. These are sales taxes that are not related to a construction project that is permitted at a value of $15 million or more. So these are our basically structural year-to-year normal sales taxes. They were pretty steady. They went up slightly over 2022, 3.788 million. The year before, 2022, was 3.743. So that's actually establishing a trend we're seeing coming into this year, where sales tax seems to be flattening out. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in this next slide. These are the 5 categories that are above $200,000 in revenue. So you can see retail on the left there, with the columns going from 21, 2022, and then 2023. Retail is growing. Construction, the one time, that is the sales tax that we receive for construction projects that are valued at $15 million or more. We pull in about $564,000. Unfortunately, it's one time, and that's because projects only last so long. That amount was really the result of 2 projects, one of which finished in 2023, and the other which is pretty much done now. So we won't be seeing the $564,000 again, or for a while, because we don't have any other projects valued that high right now. So that's again, why we break it out, we show that's one time, because we don't want to rely in the general fund on that one time. The next category over, you see construction base. You see that's declining from the prior year, and that's really a major factor in our sales tax now, which is the construction is kind of dragging down the overall sales tax revenue, while other categories are either, you know, still going up a little bit or kind of flattening out. And then as you see, restaurants, admin support and services, wholesale trades, those remain pretty steady. B&O tax regular. The B&O tax works the same way as the sales tax does as far as the construction projects. Last year, the regular B&O tax we brought in was $1.15 million, which was up slightly from the down from the 1.388. General fund expenditures. This is the 5-year trend for total operating expenditures in the general fund. As we said before, the general fund expended $26,627,000, up from 2022's $25,651. So if we were to look at the revenues and expenditures on a 5-year trend, the blue line is the revenue, and the yellow line is expenditures, and so we always want to at least see them equal or have the revenue be greater, but this shows, again, really shows the effect of the pandemic. So when the pandemic hits, you can see, like, you know, our expenditures drop, our revenues drop, you know, through 20 and 2021, and then in 2022, when labor costs increase and inflation hits, our expenditures just start growing at a rate that our revenue is just not matching. And so in 2023, you can see that that's a rather large gap, which again was about $1.7 million. Cash and investments. So this is the city's cash deposits and investment portfolio, and I want to emphasize that this is citywide. This is not just the general fund. So the fair value of everything at the end of 2023 was a little over $75 million, which sounds like a lot. During the Finance Committee, we did point out that of that $75 million, only about $1.7 million is unrestricted. So unrestricted cash in the general fund is really the only unrestricted cash that the city has. And so that's about $1.7 million. All other cash is either assigned for a certain purpose or restricted by an outside entity to be used as a certain purpose. You can see that our bond investments were at a little over $27.6 million. The LGIP, the local government investment pool, we have a little over $16.4 million. And then Key Bank, we have a hair over $31 million. So that's what that is. We normally don't have $30 million in our Key Bank checking account. Our bond proceeds were there at the end of the year. They've since been moved to the local government investment pool. But that bond proceeds does skew the percentages as far as what makes up our investment and cash mix, just because it's such a large sum of money. Yeah. Moving on, maturities. So in the fourth quarter, these bonds matured. So we had a treasury bill for $1.28 million that matured in October, which yielded 4.9%. And then we had 3 bonds with the Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation. And you can see their yields were much lower, at 0.24%, 0.22%, and 0.234%. Those were all purchased, I believe, in 2020 during the pandemic when, like, there was basically no interest. The one reason the other one is at 4.9% is we had bought that last year, and we had it for 6 months. So we had purchased that when the yields were higher. Purchases that were made, that $1.28 million, we invested in another bond for 4.8% that matures next year. And then we also purchased a bond, $2.5 million, that yields 5%, and we'll have that locked in until 2026. And this is what we call a maturity ladder. So this shows when our investments mature. And one thing we did learn about this week, the Puget Sound Finance Officers Association, which Federal Way hosted. Actually, the Federal Way finance director did a presentation on their investing strategy and what they do. And we don't have as much money as them, but they make an investment of $1 million. They have 60 investments. So every month they have something that they've invested $1 million in mature. And so their ladder looks like $1 million all the way across. As you notice, we have a couple coming up for maturity in this month, which is over $2.5 million, and in August for $3 million. And I think we might adopt a similar strategy because that's a lot of money to have just in one investment. So we might want to spread that out a little bit. But this is, as far as timing, you want to diversify when your maturities occur so you can take advantage of when interest rates are high. Other funds besides the general fund for 2023 is one that we've been watching closely is the development fund. So what is the development fund? It was created in 2017. It accounts for revenue generated by fee-based development-related activities, including permitting, plan review, and the associated cost of providing services. So the important thing is that this is fee-based development activity because it can either be funded through fees that people pay or taxes. And the tax piece is in the general fund. The fee-based development is in the development fund. Divisions in the fund include planning and development services, building division, joint and minor home repair, code enforcement, and engineering services. So the unique thing about the fund is that it's kind of the home for community development, but also there's some engineering services in there as well. This chart shows revenue for the fund in 2023 was $2.549 million. Expenditures were $3.546 million. So that's about, it's really $997,000 difference. The expenditures exceeded revenue. But one of the things we've been looking at and working on, I even met with the interim Public Works Director today, Tommy Owen. We discussed why that yellow portion represents engineering. You can see on the revenue side, there's about $350,000 in revenue, but the expenditures are over $1.2 million. And really, the idea of the fund is that these things should be paying for themselves. So we think we've figured out that there's probably some costs that were being posted here in this fund that probably belong to the street fund. So we're looking at like what is being coded where because of the implementation. We have a project accounting module that's new with our implementation, and we just need to make sure things are going to the right place. And also the $350,000 is right-of-way fees, and Public Works has been doing a good job of getting the utilities who, they like to say that their projects aren't valued very high, and the fees are based off the value. So they've been doing a good job of getting the utilities to admit that maybe the project is valued a little bit higher than they say. But this is something we are working on currently, been working on this year to address, and it looks like we're going to have some solutions for that soon. This is the fund balance for the development fund. So you can see it peaked in 2020 at over $4.6 million, and since 2020 has been steadily declining and finished 2023 about $1.3 million. ARPA funds. The city was in 2021 was awarded a total of $9,029,879 from the federal government from the American Rescue Plan Act. Through 2023, $5,341,584 have been expended. So the remaining funds is just about $3.7 million. These are the projects that were approved by council that are continuing. Some of them, like police officers, that money will be spent. The mental health support, that money will be spent. But there's some money here. For example, the tenant restroom bids for that project have come in much higher than expected. One requirement for these grant funds is that they are obligated by the end of this year. So it is likely that we're going to be back in the near future with recommendations for repurposing some of these funds. Real estate excise tax. This is a 5-year trend of what we're seeing in the real estate excise tax. Sorry, my mouth was getting dry. This graph really reflects the real estate market. So you can see, I usually note that in 2021, that's usually when people remember that people were buying houses without even having them inspected. It was very much a seller's market. And then, mortgage rates went up to 7%, and so you can see a steady decline from that time. We received in REIT 1 $754,000, and REIT 2 a little over $593,000, which you can tell is, looking back at the 2022 and 2021 levels of REIT that we had, it's quite a bit less. The good news is I think we're one of the few cities that I've chatted with that we're on the rebound a little bit in 2024, so at least it's coming back up for the city. Okay, so we'll end the presentation on a good note. So we'll talk about the two funds that have lots of money. So the marina in 2023 had a net income of nearly 1.7 million. Their revenue was just above 5.7, and their expenditures were $4 million. And I had been asked by a resident about enterprise funds. Enterprise funds, they operate like businesses, but one of the rules is they cannot support the city. So I was asked, well, how come SWIM has all the money? Well, it's because if your general government is not responsible, you don't want that to be affecting your utility rates. And so enterprise funds aren't allowed to support the general government. So that's why you see the marina and the surface water management with a lot of cash. Surface water management, they had revenue of nearly $5.9 million, expenditures of a little over $3.3 million. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions? Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Yeah, just because I was looking at the utility taxes as well as some of the other things, and we're showing an increase in the income. Is that a policy increase? I don't recall that we've done anything here to increase the amount of utility taxes, or is this just more people using the utilities or paying into the taxes, or paying into the base that ultimately has the utility taxes?
I think it's primarily usage, but I think another factor is if we have a new contract with Recology, so the rates can adjust then. I don't think we had one in 23. I'd have to check, but I would say it's primarily those two things. And like you're correct, I don't think council has done anything with the rates since I've been here.
Okay. And in fact, none of these taxes that you talked about in the beginning that show the increase have been the result of a policy to increase taxes on the public. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then lastly, what happens with SWIM and the Marina District that has all this cash on hand? How does it get spent, or does it get spent?
Well, as I said, it's a business, and so it's supposed to be spent. If it is spent, it's to support that business. And so, however, one of the costs of the business is services that the general fund provides. So there is it's called the indirect cost allocation. So for instance, say legal does work, in support of SWIM, well, we do a calculation every year during the budget that accounts for that. Other than that, then yeah, they hold on to their funds.
But otherwise, there's no transfer from the swim or the marina fund to the general fund.
No.
To help fund the city, and that would be violative of the way the enterprise fund is set up. Is that correct?
Correct. The state auditors would start screaming at us if they started to see something like that. So.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Jeff. You actually answered most of the stuff that I had. I would just say that the Burien consultant guy was talking about, are we capturing all possible costs? And you covered that, and go get them. But the question I have is, you mentioned Federal Way and like rotating investments and so on, and my phone may be lying to me, but it looks like the rate from LGIP is pretty good. So, is there any advantage? I mean, assuming we magically had that, I mean, can you actually, can you actually outperform LGIP, just by?
Well, I would say.
Is it worth the effort, is what I'm trying to say, if it were,
Well, my good friend in Burien, who's my counterpart, they don't invest. They have everything in the LGIP. But what's going to happen is that rate's going to go down. And so with our investments that are at 5% for the next 2 years, at least we're locked in there. And so when the LGIP does go down, we will be outperforming them with those investments.
Going down?
Eventually, well, yeah.
Oh, darn. Okay.
Well, it's.
That's basically it. Thank you.
Councilmember Mahoney.
On the general fund, on the Utilitex type, is cable TV also the wireless service? Is that bucketed together, or is it? Because I expected both cable TV and telephone to drop, as you kind of were shocked about.
I'd have to check the invoices. I mean, it's all pretty much Comcast, so whatever they're covering. I would think wireless would be under communication, would be under telephone.
Okay, because we had talked about the fact that eventually everybody will go to some sort form of streaming in time. So it was interesting to see that change.
Right.
The retail, the general fund, so sales tax, the retail trade is going up. And would you say that it's probably a reaction of COVID, but are we seeing anything from some of the laws that were changed on online sales and the destination zip code getting any revenues? Are you seeing anything in that regard?
Not really.
Not much? Okay. I think the money's going somewhere. I'm not so sure where. I had one more. Hang on just a second here. Oh, let's talk about construction. So the revenue in construction is dropping because we don't have any projects on it. Have you looked at a long-range plan on that in particular to see if we're able to continue to cover the costs? Obviously, we take the money in 2020, but we pay it out in 2022 and 23 when construction happens and so forth. Do you see that being problematic if we don't get more development here in the near future?
Yeah, I think my comment during the Finance Committee meeting was, because typically every year, if the general fund is struggling, then one of the things we do is like, oh, maybe we'll hold on to that one-time sales tax in the general fund, and it becomes a discussion. And I don't, at least for this year, I don't see enough projects for that to even be a discussion, so I expect this a drop-off. I think I would have to talk to community development, probably about what they expect as far as anything long-term.
Okay. And then, and this may be for Councilmember Nutting as well as you, do you see that if interest rates can drop and maybe construction costs level out, that we might see a surge?
I think Jeremy mentioned something at the committee.
I included you in the question.
I mean, all the correspondence that I've been getting has been that, yes, if the Fed comes out and says that inflation has stabilized and they lower percentage rates 1/4 to 0.5%, there will be an influx. Unfortunately, it's probably not going to be until after the first of the year which this being an election year and change of presidency, there are developers that have money to spend that they're just not going to spend it until after the first of the year. And so there might be a boom, but there's other things the city of Des Moines needs to do to welcome developers to this area.
In terms of interest rates as well, I attended a talk by the King County Chief Economist last month, and they're projecting interest rates to be back to what they consider normal, 2% by the end of 2025. So that's their projection. So, you know, they're the economists more than I am.
They're all projections.
Yeah,
Thank you.
exactly.
Thank you. Those are the questions I had.
Thank you. Any others? This is Rosa. All right, well, Jeff, it looks like we're good. Thank you so much, appreciate it. Back to you, Tim.
Thank you. I just have one last item, and that is our city manager recruitment update. So I'll hand it over to our assistant city manager for that update.
Good evening, council, staff, and community members. My name is AJ Johnson-Newton, and I'm here to provide a city manager recruitment update. Pretty good news. So the posting went live on May 30th, and I talked to our consultant last week, and in the first week, we received 6 applicants. 3 of them are in-state, 3 of them are out-of-state. We also have the job posting posted on our City of Des Moines website, and so we've had a few, or 3 candidates that have applied through the site that I did refer back to SGR, and then we had another candidate reach out to me, which I then connected with Dave, which is our recruiter. So at least we know we have 6 applicants as of last week, and 4 at least that have expressed interest. I'll get my next update tomorrow. And I'll be continuing to get those weekly until the end of until the recruitment closes, which is on June 30th. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is that on June 27th, I'll be back up here with the council, and we'll be working on the revised timeline. We did post later than we intended, unfortunately, but we needed to do the work on the brochure. And I think that given that we had 6 applicants apply in the first week and at least 3 that applied through the city, I think it was well worth the delay. But it was unfortunate. I want to acknowledge that. So the recruiter did send back a revised timeline. So we'll take a look. We'll see if we can trim some time down on that. And then the other thing we'll be working on is establishing some criteria that you guys can use to start to review the applications when you guys get that first batch, which will be after June 30th. I'll have a better sense of the timing once we get to that meeting. And that's all I have for you guys tonight.
Any questions? Great, thanks for the update. Appreciate it.
And that concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our consent agenda. So would the city clerk please read the consent agenda?
Item 1, approval of vouchers. Item 2, approval of minutes. Item 3, Juneteenth proclamation. Item 4, 2025 SCIP work plan and budget. Item 5, updating gender references in the DMMC. Item 6, Marina Building roof replacement. Item 7, Port of Seattle Economic Development Grant. That concludes the consent agenda, Mayor.
Thank you, well done. Do I have a motion? Councilmember Nutting.
I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Have a second? Councilmember Mahoney has a second. Is there an item that, thank you, that a councilmember wishes to pull? Councilmember Harris.
Item 7, the port grant.
Okay, so we're going to pull item number 7. Any others? So items, consent items 1 through 6. Take a vote. All in favor? Raise your right hand. It looks like it's 7-0. Thank you very much. All right, so I'm going to read the proclamation before we address item number 7. Whereas on January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation setting in motion the end of slavery in the United States. And whereas the Civil War ended with the surrender of General Lee at Appomattox Courthouse on April 9th, 1865. And whereas this news reached Texas when Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston Bay with Union troops, it was on June 19, 1865, that he announced, "The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free." And whereas celebration of the end of slavery, which became known as Juneteenth, is the oldest known public celebration of the end of slavery in the United States. And whereas Juneteenth commemorates African American freedom and celebrates the successes gained through education and greater opportunity. And whereas, on a larger scale, celebration of Juneteenth reminds each of us of the precious promises of freedom, equality, and opportunity which are at the core of the American dream. And now, therefore, the Des Moines City Council hereby proclaims June 19th as a day to celebrate Juneteenth 2024. In the city of Des Moines, Washington, signed this 13th day of June 2024, Tracy Buxton, Mayor. You can clap. I felt like I was reading a story to my kids. You know, wow, when this happened and this happened. It's a very exciting part of history. Okay, well, thank you for that. And we will now move to consider item number 7, the Port of Seattle Economic Development Grant. And now we'll hand it over to Councilmember Harris.
Colleagues, I will be voting no, as I do every year on these things. And what I've heard from the council in the past is that, you know, what does it matter? And I say that words do matter. The grant mentions the Century Agenda, which has some very nice aspirational things about improving jobs and growth and so forth, but it also contains hundreds of pages of annexes concerning specific targets, such as increasing flights and especially cargo flights. I will point us to the prior item concerning the city manager language. The words matter. You know, I would blow by it, perhaps, but you change the language to remove the stereotypical pronouns, because doing so changes the way that you think. We've spent 2 decades just going, you know, hey, whatever, regarding the Port of Seattle. But because we just talk about, like, well, they're going to do whatever they're going to do, and we use this language and we go, you know, what does it matter? Well, it does matter. It changes the way we think about the Port of Seattle. And the 2 gentlemen on the START committee, they are new community representatives. They get it. They get the notion that you're essentially being constantly sold on how great the Port of Seattle is for us. And the truth is, we get these $30,000 matching grants every year, and it is less than a drop in the bucket compared to the negative impacts of the airport. And until we start caring about those little things like, do we support the Century Agenda, basically we cannot think properly about our relationship with the Port of Seattle. These words do matter. They're not trivial, and I will be voting no, even if it's only 1-6. But at some point, we've got to stop thinking about every interaction of our council with the Port of Seattle as being like whatever. We should never support anything having to do with the Port of Seattle without considering the overall impacts or what we are getting in return for even a couple of words in a sentence. We got to change our entire thought process, and that's it.
Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Yeah, point of clarification, really. This is to the city manager. Is there anything in accepting this grant that requires us to support the Century Agenda?
No.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes.
And
Councilmember Harris.
just to be clear, all that I asked for was that the background information be amended to remove mention of the Century Agenda. I don't care if the Port of Seattle, in their brochures and stuff, if they want to tout the wonders of the Century Agenda, that's fabulous. But it should never be in our language unless, it should never be in our language to say that we support the Century Agenda, either in any application or in our background stuff. We just got to stop talking about it. If they want to talk about it, great, but not us. Thank you.
So I do have a little bit of an answer for that. I think Councilmember Harris's passion is fine in regard to it, but I think for the sake of clarity to the public, I want to make a couple of points. The Century Agenda does have a few items in it that talks about mitigation, and those items are where we can have our greatest strength in advocacy, is holding their feet to the fire with regard to a couple of these statements that they put in their Century Agenda. So one of those is goal number 3, objective 11 and objective 18. So one of those says reduce air pollutants and carbon emissions. Well, are they fulfilling that? I would say, most of us would say, no, they're not. Partner and engage with external stakeholders to build a healthy, safe, and equitable community. I think a lot of us who advocate with regard to port policy would say, no, we should hold their feet to the fire on that, and that's written in the Century Agenda. And then in regard to goal number 3, it says there is a subjective qualifier. It says responsibly invest in the economic growth of the region. Well, that is a subjective term. What does responsible mean to us or anybody else? Those 3 items are written in the Century Agenda, and those would be the best points for our advocacy with regard to the port. So I think they provide us with ammunition in their Century Agenda. To Councilmember Harris's point, he did say there isn't anything in what we're going to vote on tonight that requires us to support or give support to the Century Agenda. There's nothing in the agreement that we're making. It's only mentioned once in the agreement, and it's simply a descriptor in the 4th whereas in a list of reasons that the port designs a partnership program. So when we vote on this tonight, we're not voting on anything. There's nothing, no descriptor in our agreement that says that we're supporting the Century Agenda. It's simply, what this is a detailed resistance to how the packet was prepared and the staff written briefing. The written briefing in the packet is what Councilmember Harris is frustrated about, and I'm going to give him that. So, but in regard to the actual item we're voting on, I will be voting in support of the agreement for the reasons I just stated. So, without further ado, unless there's another comment, I will take a motion. Go ahead, Councilmember Nutting.
I move to accept the economic development grant from the Port of Seattle in the amount of $33,260 and authorize the city manager to sign the economic development partnership agreement substantially in the form as attached.
Do I have a second? Deputy Mayor Steinmetz for the second. Any further discussion? All right, take it to a vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. So I have Deputy Mayor Steinmetz, I have Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Grace Matsugi, Councilmember Mahoney, and myself. All opposed? I have Councilmember Oxiger and Councilmember Harris opposed. So 5-2. Thank you. All right. So that's the consent agenda. We move on to our public hearings. So the first item, first public hearing item we have tonight is a transportation improvement plan. I am going to, if you give me a second, I am going to click to the page here. And for this item, the reason, the purpose of this public hearing is to provide an update to the city's transportation improvement plan, and for the city council to approve the draft resolution number 24-042, adopting the proposed transportation improvement plan for the city of Des Moines for the years 2025 to 2044. So I will now open the public hearing, and we will begin with a staff presentation from Acting Public Works Director Tommy Owen.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tommy Owen, Acting Public Works Director. So tonight I will be presenting the public hearing for the 2025 through 2044 Transportation Improvement Plan, also what we kind of refer to as the TIP. All right, so what is the TIP? The TIP is a prioritized list of 91 planned transportation projects which are not financially constrained. It's derived from our Comprehensive Transportation Plan, which is another long-range transportation plan looking at the next 20 years for the city. That CTP sets the policies, goals, and strategies to help guide decisions for existing and future transportation systems for all modes of travel. It also defines a manageable network of arterial roadways, priority pedestrian networks, priority bicycle networks, and transit service priorities to support the city. So how do projects get into the TIP? Mainly they're derived from the Comprehensive Transportation Plan. These projects are for safety, capacity, pedestrian, and bicycle needs, and also supporting transit. Another way for projects to get into the TIP is from analysis of the city's transportation system. This is from traffic engineering studies and citizen input and concerns that we receive throughout the year. Also interagency and utility coordination. So what that means is if we have a city such as SeaTac doing a project near the jurisdictional boundary, there's an opportunity there to partner with them. Same thing as like with Sound Transit and WashDOT, we partner with them on a number of projects. And I also want to mention utilities. A lot of our utilities, we do interlocal agreements with them when they're doing a project so that we can add city funds to their project in order to improve such things as the roadway system itself. So how is the TIP used? It provides direction to staff for the development of the 6-year capital improvement plan, where we, whereas the TIP, as I mentioned before, is not financially constrained. Once those projects are identified in the TIP, we can bring them into the CIP, where we identify funding sources for those projects. The TIP is also used for project planning and coordination, as I kind of mentioned before with utilities. We provide utilities with our TIP so that they can understand what the city's goals are for the next 20 years. The TIP is also required by state law to be submitted annually on July 31st. We report it to WashDOT and PSRC, and it also positions projects for future grants and loans. So typically, any grant opportunity that arises, the project that we submit the grant for must typically be included in the city's TIP. So discussion and process. Public notice was published in the Seattle Times on May 30th and June 6th. There's the opportunity for public comment at tonight's hearing, and staff did not receive any public comments. So looking back at the TIP accomplishments, sort of over the last year and some of the things that we're working on currently. So priority 1, the pavement preservation program. This year we've got the 2024 overlay program. Construction will start in July for that project. It's really the most significant overlay project that the city's had in years. Priority 2, traffic safety improvement program. We've done some channelization improvements up on 4th Avenue in Des Moines, in North Hill. Priority 3, ADA compliance program. We continue to remove trip hazards One of the projects for that over the last year was doing some grinding of the sidewalk on 11th in front of City Hall and then around the parking lot here. Priority 4, the 24th Avenue Improvement Project. That's currently under construction. I will note that that is a project that was suspended while we dealt with some utility conflicts, and I am happy to report that that project will get going again next week. Priority 5, Sound Transit Light Link Rail. That's currently under construction. We're very close to being completed with that project within the city. Priority 6, WashDOT SR 509 Gateway and South 216th Bridge. Another exciting thing as well, the South 216th Bridge reopened to two-way traffic last week. So a couple of the proposed revisions from the previous year's TIP. Priority 16, the Comprehensive Transportation Plan, which, as I mentioned earlier, is useful in developing the TIP. It was a priority 43, but we've moved it up to a priority 16 as an update is really needed on that in the next 5 or so years. It's been about 15 years since that document was updated on a wholesale basis. Priority 84 and 85, I'm going to kind of combine them here, but they're two projects on North Hill for 4th Avenue. Based on some of the citizen concerns we've received over the years, it made sense to add this project to the TIP. Much like 8th Avenue, within North Hill is already on the TIP. So you'll see that in the TIP, 8th Avenue, I believe, is priority 83, so we put those projects kind of in that same time frame. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'll provide you with the recommended motion.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that, Tommy. So now it's time for public comment portion of the public hearing. So we do have someone who's signed up, and so I'll direct my comments there. Please keep your comments respectful and understand that anyone speaking or acting in a disruptive manner will be removed from the meeting. Please state your name and city of residence. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. And we have Chuck Coleman up.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor, City Council, Interim City Manager, and staff and citizens. I wasn't going to bring this up, but we had an event at Redondo, which I thought you need to be aware of, as it relates to the transportation plan. I mentioned this to Tommy earlier. We had an event where a young lady was in a wheelchair trying to get to Wooten Park from the parking area. I heard that she fell out of her chair due to the irregular ground. I went over and looked at it, and my retired professional opinion, there is no ADA compliant access to Wooten Park from the parking area. You have to go through a gravel area, down a gravel area, and get to a steep slope, navigate through the logs to get to the sidewalk. So I thought it might be good to bring that up tonight. There are 6 items of the 91 items that are focused in Redondo. Earlier at the committee meeting, there was discussion about moving forward some of those items which would help this situation out. Also, there's a stormwater issue there too, which could be solved kind of at the same time. So the request is staff to take a look at that before any other accidents happen out there and other bad things happen. That's all I had for tonight.
Thank you. And I think there is an ADA compliance line in the TIP, correct? It's right, yeah. Okay, good. Is there anyone who didn't sign up to speak who wishes to speak for this, in this item, this transportation improvement plan? Second time, is there anyone who did not sign up to speak who wishes to speak? Third call, is there anyone who did not sign up to speak who wishes to speak? All right, thank you. Next up is council questions. So council, do you have any questions? Please, questions only at this time. Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, so let's see, the softball and then the less so. Is there a schedule for WashDOT to provide a presentation on SR 509 Phase 2 at any point in the near future?
So staff has been working on interlocal agreement with WashDOT for the Barnes Creek area, the historic 509 right-of-way. We were going to bring that to council a couple months ago, but we hit some snags on that. So we're continuing to work with WashDOT to finalize that agreement. And at that time, we'll bring that to council, and I'm anticipating WashDOT coming to council at that time to give an update.
Second softball is, given the marina steps, has that in any way altered like this bike lane thing that's going to happen to try to connect 227th and then over to the beach park and so on? Is that still the same thing?
Are you referring to the 223rd
223rd.
project?
Well, no, I thought there was supposed to be some kind of a thing where eventually there'd be like a bike lane, a bike path through the marina that took you over to the beach park and, no? Or, I'm just wondering if that's part of the marina, if that's been altered in any way by the marina steps.
So it wouldn't, I'm not aware of anything like that for the Marina Steps project. I do know on
Oh, you're killing me because I can't see it, but there's something right in like item 40 something on the tip that has to do with, never mind, I'll catch you off offline.
Yeah.
I have to ask, regarding 24th Avenue, I'm glad, you mentioned that it's the most, one of the more significant projects in recent history. It's frankly been fraught. And I understand, you're working with utilities and so forth. What, if any, steps has the city taken to do a lessons learned? Because you're going to have to keep working with these same wonderful people. And I get asked that all the time. I mean, it comes across as finger pointing to the public, and they want, and I think it's reasonable to ask what reassurance they have that the next project and the next project will go somewhat more smoothly. And I'm sorry, but that seems like a reasonable question?
Yeah, sure, there's definitely some lessons learned on that project. I think that our city staff did a great job of reaching out to those utilities in the very beginning when we were planning this project. So I think going forward, we'll be typically doing that sort of correspondence with our utilities. I just hope that they listen a little bit better.
I mean, could we be more conservative in our timelines? In other words, if we're expecting them on Tuesday, maybe not until Friday and so on. Yeah.
Well, I can answer that. I think the lessons learned piece is really going to be on the utility side because right now our focus has been get the project going. So move to where they need to move and start the project. Our next focus is where we're moving now, which is into filing a claim to have them pay for the delay cost. And so when they're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars of making payments, they're going to have to ask themselves, why didn't we move when we said we were going to move? And the city can't go out and move for them. They have to move on their own. And when they don't, delays are incurred, costs are incurred, and we're going to be seeking those. So we've had conversations about how we're moving forward, and we will be filing claims shortly.
Thank you for that.
Did you want to extend your ask? It's item number 62. I'm found the item he's talking about.
She says it's item 62, Marina Bike Connection from 227th to Cliff, install bike connection through Marina to link the Des Moines Creek Trail to South 227th. Thank God I thought that it had finally happened. We can talk about it offline, but I'm just curious if that might be effective. Thank you very much. You made me feel better.
Any other questions at this point? Okay. I will now close the public hearing. And do we have a motion? Take a motion. Councilmember Mahoney.
I move to approve draft resolution number 24-042, adopting the 2025 through 2044 Transportation Improvement Plan for the City of Des Moines.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Nutting for the second. Thank you. Open for discussion. Councilmember Mahoney.
I'm just going to say that being involved in this now in my 7th year and learning from others who had been part of it in the past and understand the history, there's a lot of good work here. I think that the short-term projects, and I'm talking about the next 2 to 3 years, is realistic. They've done a good job of securing the funding where they can, and they've handled the situations that always come. I think a lot of people will remember 216th, which was a great project, but ran into quite a slew of problems, which they all will. Our 223rd, where they found the old unincorporated King County Road to be supported by logs of all things, and so that had to be removed. So there's always things when you get into things that you're going to have issues. But I think it's a comprehensive, very well-developed plan. It covers many projects throughout our town. It's equitable, it's fair, and it is a wish list we all like to see done yesterday, but money comes into picture, so I think it's good, and it's going to service the need that translates to the CIP and the state mandated processes, so I'm going to support it.
Thank you. Nice summary. Appreciate that. Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Yeah, I want to emphasize the term plan for this. This is a well-thought-out, planful document on what we can accomplish in the near term and the long term. And I think that, a lot of work has gone into doing this. Yeah, there's a lot of things we'd all like to see done right away, get moved up the priority list, but I think this is a reasonable priority list that is equitable throughout our city. And that's one of the things that we look at up here, is to make sure that no one part is sort of getting all the attention to the detriment of others. And I think that this has been a good job of sort of making sure that a lot of the projects that need to get done are placed in the proper priority and distributed throughout the town, and I compliment you on that. Thank you. I'm going to support this.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, let's take it to a vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Looks like it's 7-0. Thank you so much. All right, so moving to the next public hearing. This item is in regard to updating city building and fire codes. I'm going to move to that section here. Oh, thank you. So the purpose of this agenda item is for the City Council to consider draft ordinance 24-015, updating Title 14 of the Municipal Code regarding building and fire codes, cleaning up language and maintaining consistency with Washington State adopted construction codes. I will now open the public hearing. And we will begin with a staff presentation from Acting Community Development Director Dan Hopp.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Buxton. Thank you for this opportunity to present tonight. It'll be a little bit longer presentation than the previous one, but hopefully not. Oh, sorry. Do I need to start over? Thank you for this opportunity. So, I have the clicker, sorry. Oh, okay, I was hiding. The proposed changes, so the municipal code is, Title 14 is the construction building codes and fire codes that we are talking about tonight. There was, my name is Dan Hopp, by the way. Thank you for the introduction, Acting Community Development Director. There was a 15-day noticing period, and there were no public comments that came back to staff. So in the introduction here, there are basically two ways and methods that municipalities adopt codes. One would be amending specific code sections and specific code years. As you all probably pretty well aware, that we just went through another code cycle, adopted 2021 model codes. So for instance, if we were adopting code years and model codes, like many municipalities, we would be up here every time that happens, when the state does. That is not the method we are involved in here at the city. In the city of Des Moines, our amendments to the state codes are written directly into the municipal code. So by not referencing specific code cycles or section numbers, our amendments are automatically adopted and attached to the most current state codes. The only issue that can arise from this methodology is that occasionally it does need to be reviewed and updated, and that's what we're doing tonight, hopefully. The last time this was done was 2013. So really, the goal of this review that we've done is to clean up a lot of the language, to make it more clear for the public. We're aiming to improve the public understanding of our municipal amendments and our codes. Some of the language that, since there's so many code cycles that happened since 2013, have either become obsolete or unclear. So we've aimed to make sure that everyone, that our municipal code is relevant and efficient. And then we also collaborated with South King Fire. So we worked a lot with them. Tonight you'll hear a few proposed amendments. I have along with me Scott Gerard from South King Fire, is the plans examiner, who will help tackle any fire-related questions. So in the first section that we are amending, or proposing to amend the language, you can see that this is the application for the Title 14. And really, when you look at it, there's a lot in there about 50% and new construction and this and that. We've felt that it was, in our opinion, the language in the section can be simplified while still providing the same information. Title 14 applies to all work that requires permit. Requirements for alterations and additions are included in the Washington State existing building code, and that was a document that may not have existed when this section was first crafted. So this includes a provision for what we call a level 3 alteration, which is in the chapter 9 of the existing building code. And that includes detailed requirements for structures that are altered more than 50%. So we didn't feel it necessary to have conflicting applications there. So we were relying on more of the existing building code for that, and then simplify the language. This next one is it looks very lengthy, but it's just about a property protection bond. And here we felt that that we wanted to clarify the purpose and the that the over the years we have gotten a lot of questions about whether or not it has to be a cash bond. So we got rid of the cash portion. It could be paper or cash bond, and then we have also had to, over the years, explain the excuse me, I lost my, that we had explained to many applicants that not all, sorry. We wanted to clarify that this bond could be claimed by the city to remove or complete the building. So in essence, this probably would be very rare, but if in the event of failure by the applicant to satisfactorily complete the work included in the building permit, the bond or cash may be claimed by the city manager or the city manager's designee to fund completion or removal of the incomplete structure. Essentially, we're trying to protect the city's liability for attractive nuisances and things like that nature. So we felt that there wasn't enough, even though we felt the intent of that language, we wanted to clarify further what that was. So the next one, so the majority of this rather lengthy section of the DMMC concerns permit applications. Line items 1, 2, and 3 will remain substantially unchanged, and so we did not include the entire text in this slide. But there were some changes, and so 1 is unchanged. 2 is we've added the words time limit for clarification. 3, certificate of is added to be consistent more with the building code language. And then 4, we wanted to get rid of marquee. It's defined in the building code, and we are happy with that definition. And there are fueling station canopy requirements are now included in the building code. As you can see, section 406. So we felt that was no longer necessary. And we took this opportunity to replace, instead of the marquee special construction, we added an address identification section, which I'll explain later. This coincides now with new requests from South King Fire's address identification amendment. So that's what we did there. This one, the Washington State Building Code now permits these types of structures. They're 5-story wood frame buildings. We had a long section on guidance on how to build these. The code typically only allows 4 stories, but there are ways. There were ways in our code that allowed for 5. This was kind of from my understanding, ahead of the times. At the time of when this was adopted or written, according to my predecessor, the late Larry Picard, these sections were first added to DMC when only the city of Seattle and the city of Tacoma building codes included provisions for 5 stories wood frame construction. Now that the Washington State Building Code addresses these projects, we feel it's time to remove the amendments from the municipal code altogether. So this would just be a deletion. Next is the fire lane requirements for South King Fire. We're getting into the fire amendments here. So the reason for this change is to update fire lane requirements to the newest version of the IFC and to help reduce response times by improving building address visibility. The State of Washington Fire Code does not include regulations for fire apparatus access roads. So in cooperation with South King Fire, The city had previously adopted the access road requirements found in the 2015 International Fire Code. At the request of South King Fire, we would like to upgrade to the requirements found in 2021 version of the ISC. Because the new code section being referenced includes rules for how the fire lanes are marked, we've created a line to replace those rules with the ones we already have in Title 10. So basically, this would be similar to what we already have. I know I've said first that we don't put code sections in, but to clarify, the reason why this is in is because the state did not adopt that code section. So we had to put that in the code. And to 2015, now we're requesting to put it to 2021 to make it current. But the fire lane requirements are found in Title 10, which is what it refers to. So moving on. This is the same code section. The first two I just mentioned. This one here is what I was referencing before about the building code, how it references this portion. We're going to follow fire code. This gets adopted. This is this is something that's already in the code, but the difference is instead of 4-inch lettering and I should clarify, this is not for residential areas, this is for commercial areas or buildings. But this, instead of 4-inch lettering numbers, it would be 8 inches. And it just makes, this is a fire and life safety issue. I've seen pictures of what it looks like from the street, 4 inches versus 8. You'd be surprised even how hard it is to see 8. But I think it's a huge improvement. Hopefully you agree. And but the requirement here would not make everyone upgrade. So the key is in the exceptions. So if you go look at there, down at the bottom there, the only time that existing buildings would have to be complying is if they are already getting a permit, or they're getting a business license application, or for the first time. I don't think that renewal was supposed to be in there. Well, confirm that, please. And then moving on, so 1050, this is about the automated alarm systems. We changed the wording to clarify it as fire alarm and detection systems. And our current amendment already requires that fire alarms be included in buildings of more than 3,000 square feet. The 2021 Washington State Fire Code requires all new systems to be addressable. Conventional fire alarm system might include a couple of zones, first floor, second floor, etc. And an addressable system provides first responders with much more detailed information about the location of the sensor that has been activated and can save valuable response time. So we also wanted to use current code terminology in the exception. So we added all new fire alarm systems shall be addressable. And then here is a new section we're proposing, and it's addressing the fire alarm panel replacements. These panels tend to have about a 20-year lifespan. In that 20 years, a lot happens with manufacturing. So if they can replace it, like for like, that's still an option. But when they can't is where this is going to address. So just for reference, the fire code already has requirements for building owners that they shall be responsible to maintain the fire and life safety systems in an operable condition at all times. That's in IFC 90784. And then it already addresses the fire alarm panel replacements as seen here, but also in what I just said. So this new section clarifies basically what is approved. As you can see, I kind of highlighted and the approved section of that. It's the same thing as the previous one I just mentioned. There's an approved portion of the code, and what we're trying to do is help clarify what would be approved by the fire code official. So basically, if we go back to this one, since it's a new section, I should read it. When a fire alarm panel cannot be repaired, replacement panels for fire alarm systems required by the fire code or this code shall meet the requirements of new installations. When a fire alarm panel replacement is necessary, alarm notification and initiation devices shall be updated as determined by the fire code official. Exception, if an existing fire alarm control unit is replaced with identical equipment, it shall be considered maintenance. So again, that they still have that option, but because every panel today is made addressable, they will, if they can't replace it like for like, they will have to use an addressable system, and they work with the fire code official on how that's going to be approved. So it's just more clarifying language, really. And then, so here is our fire sprinkler ordinance or municipal code. So on this one, the city has recognized, long recognized the value of fire sprinklers in protecting lives. Municipal code includes an amendment that reflects that recognition by reducing the thresholds for requiring fire sprinkler systems. While updating the code references in that amendment, we would like to eliminate an exception for alternate means and method, as that is already built into the other codes. So you can see on the left side, there's an exception. It's basically allowing for an alternate means and method that's already built into the codes. If they wanted to use an alternate means and method, they could provide that, but felt it was unnecessary to have that. And then that is it. So I know, I think, before questions, I think there's a public hearing.
Public comment. Absolutely. It's now time for the public comment portion of the public hearing. Please keep your comments respectful and understand that anyone speaking or acting in a disruptive manner will be removed from the meeting. Please state your name and city of residence, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. And we do have someone who's signed up, and so I'll call Chuck Coleman up to the podium.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor, City Council, Interim City Manager, staff, citizens. For the record, Chuck Coleman, Redondo Beach Drive. As a retired practicing professional licensed architect for almost 50 years, I can understand the difficulty in amending codes, writing them, and enforcing them. I've done it for a long time. And I have to tell you, I'm here to compliment staff tonight. These changes are very fair, very legitimate, should be made. I hope you'll approve them. I know building codes are extremely boring. If you ever have insomnia, it works really good. But I'm just here to compliment staff and hope you guys will pass this. These are very good changes to the code. That's all I have.
Thank you. So is there anyone out in the audience who desires to speak, did not sign up to speak, but desires to speak to this issue? All right, second call. Is there anyone who did not sign up to speak, but who wishes to make a public comment? And third call. Is there anyone out in the audience who did not sign up to speak, but wishes to speak? All right, great. So this is question time for the council. So council, do you have any questions? Questions only at this time. Thank you. Councilmember Nutting.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I have a couple questions, so I'll go. In 14.10.050, I'm sorry, not 55. You're not eliminating the ability, is it 55? I'm sorry. The ability to build 5/2 construction.
Oh, that would be.
Red, I'm sorry, yeah. 220.
Thank you, good question. No, that is not the case because the building codes have built that into the code. This is the reason why we're getting rid, or was suggesting to get rid of it, because it's no longer a needed set of codes in our municipal code. What the code does now, and they lay it out pretty well in their height and area section, chapter 5 in IPC. They basically require 1 hour of type 5A construction, and you have to pressurize your stairs and your shafts and elevators and things. So it's a little bit different than how this was laid out, but that's the way the state has allowed 5 stories of wood frame construction. So we didn't see any need to keep this. So.
Okay, and then I think it was 5.5 that I was thinking of. Was there any changes to in the? Yeah, there we go. With the enunciator where the event may occur, which that's what this panel is for, is to show you where the event is occurring. Is there any changes in placing the same kind of smaller panel in lobbies of a 5/2 construction or somewhat of a high-rise building, possibly up on Peck Highway? Or
I'm going to hand this over to Scott Gerard. He's the South King Fire Plans Examiner. So.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, citizens, and staff. I'm Scott Gerard, Plans Examiner, South King Fire. To answer your question, no, there's still a requirement for a remote enunciator if the main fire alarm panel is not located near the main entrance to the building, so that doesn't change. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers my question.
That stays the same.
Okay. And then my third and final question is we're not adopting anything that the city of Seattle or any surrounding cities haven't adopted prior to us adopting this tonight.
No, actually, we are in alignment with all the South County fire jurisdictions, has the same language. And so, in essence, we're kind of catching up to that, too, to make it consistent, not only for the customers, vendors, owners, and everything, but when a panel needs to be replaced and we get calls, and to avoid trying to answer all the questions time after time, it just clarifies what is already kind of called out in the code. So no big change at all. It's just a clarification of when a panel gets replaced, and here's how that falls into place. So.
And catching up so we can save lives.
Correct, yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's all about life safety.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? All right. So now I'm going to close the public hearing. And I'm going to ask for a motion. Councilmember Nutting.
I move to enact draft ordinance number 24-015, updating the city's building and fire codes to clean up language and maintain consistency with the Washington State adopted construction codes.
Do I have a second? Councilmember Mahoney. Thank you for the second. Discussion. Councilmember Nutting and then Councilmember Harris.
I just have to say, in my line of work as a superintendent for a GC, fire life safety is the most important on my list. If I walk away from, I'm on a 30-story building right now. If I walk away from a 16-story, 30-story, 9-story building, and the shafts aren't complete, and I know things have been done wrong, I can't sleep at night. And for us to be adopting this code, to update the fire code, to help our builders and our citizens be more safe, is great for me. I'm glad to make the motion, and thank you very much for bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Councilmember Harris.
Just anecdotally, I wanted to mention your predecessor, who I watched get screamed at about that fifth floor stick frame thing on a building that we would all recognize years ago. And he just, took it amicably and was like, no, that's going to become the standard, and you'll see. But I just was thinking about it as you spoke, how much, friction sometimes you have with people, even when you're trying to do the right thing. And so, thank you so much.
Any other comments or discussion items? I personally would like to echo Mr. Coleman's comment. This reflects a lot of work. So Dan, good job. Thank you for being here tonight, all this time to wait to answer questions. So appreciate the presentation and you guys being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
So without further ado, we'll take it to a vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Looks like it's a 7-0. Thank you very much. So this takes us to the new business portion of the meeting. This is a time for council members for purpose of proposing new business items for discussion on a future agenda that also have not been previously before the council. This is not a time for council to take action or questions about old business. Council members can submit questions or seek updates on previously discussed business to the city manager at any time. Do any council members have new business they would like to propose? Excellent. We move on to council member reports, and we'll start tonight with Councilmember Grace Matsui.
I'd like to skip my report this week. Thank you.
Oh, gosh, did you get that just from vice chairing in my place last week? I'm so sorry. Oh, well, thank you for being here. Councilmember Nutting, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I want to congratulate the graduating class of 2024, all of the Highline School District and all over the region, but mostly Mount Rainier, of course. And second of all, I do want to say, as I support Pride Month. Also, this month is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. And namely, June 10th through the 16th is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. In all suicides throughout the United States, 80% of those that unalive themselves is 80% men. And they go unnoticed, they don't report it, they don't think anything's wrong. So just the support would be good. Know what the signs are, look for them, and ask any man how they're doing, if they're okay. 988 is a number you can call for help. And if you text MHA to 741-741, you don't have to talk to anybody. They'll text back and forth with you, or text help to them, anybody that's going through a mental health crisis. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. Councilmember Oscar's not feeling well, so. Next up, we have Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. I attended a tour of the Regional Transit Center as part of being on the Regional Transit Advisory Committee, and it is a fascinating thing in terms of their ability to communicate with buses, the telemetry. It's a really good thing, and to advocate for that, not only that last mile, but also increasing access to Orca cards. They're a truly wonderful resource that I wish more people, we just have to find a way to get that initial card in people's hands in order to get them to use transit. On Wednesday, I'm also part of this Emergency Management Advisory Committee with King County, and we did this tabletop exercise about basically a water taxi event, and it is something I hope we will think about as we consider a ferry. It is stunningly difficult to provide any kind of services in that kind of emergency. I attended one of those Port of Seattle Part 150 noise workshops, and there was a comment at the Environment Committee meeting that the fact that they scheduled it the same night as a city council meeting does not entirely thrill me in terms of public outreach. I want to point out that the city, both the mayor and I, put in a certain amount of effort in supporting a port package update bill with $1 million in state funding. And it looks like the Port of Seattle is limiting the eligibility list to only 3,200 homes out of, depending on who you ask, 9,600 that got port packages in the first place. And it is beyond disappointing to work that hard to get state funding and to get people behind something. We talk about increasing, our stock, preserving our stock. You're going to spend $100,000 to redo a home with a failing port package. And if we want to preserve housing stock and you're under a flight path, you have to start there for one thing, in addition to building stuff. So I will never vote for anything having to do with Century Agenda when anything having to do with the Port of Seattle, which generates over $1 billion a year in revenue now, and every year is going to be a record from this point forward, to get $33,000 back every year, and to get even something like sound insulation to be so fraught is just shameful. And language does matter. At a certain point, you have to start saying, sorry, but I find even these little things that seem so minor, they're not minor. It's going to require a change in thought process. We deserve much better treatment in exchange for the amazing amounts of revenue that they generate for the King County writ large. It's basic fairness, and it's not me being, screaming from the rooftops. It's just that we're so used to being mistreated that it just sounds like I'm being over the top. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mahoney.
I just want to talk about the parade that's coming up July 20th. We put out a notice out on like Facebook and Waterland Blog and several other places. We desperately need some volunteers. We used to draw quite a few from Highline College. They don't have that resource as much anymore. It's a good 4 hours to get a good picture of your community, and I encourage you to go to the Destination Des Moines website. We also could use some entries for the parade. If you know anybody that wants to be in the parade, or they say they should, or represent their business, they can also do that. And a personal request, I need 3 more boats for the parade, and if you know anybody that's got one in the garage, tell them to call me, get it out, decorate it up, and we'll put a couple of folks in it, and as we move toward Waterland Parade. Thank you.
Well, thanks for all your work on that. I appreciate it. Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Yeah, it's kind of been, I've been busy. So I'm just going to go through this really fast. I was at opening day of the market. It was wonderful. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there last Saturday because I was at an all-day wedding, and I also missed the Bayside Ball because of that, but I've heard they were very good events. There was an interview with the mayor. I was interviewed with the mayor on Wesley TV back at the end of May. We had a Citizens Advisory Committee meeting also at the end of May, and we're going to have our next meeting by Zoom on July the 3rd, that being the date that was when everybody was available. We did an interesting thing, and thanks for Councilmember Harris for setting this up. We went and did a tour of the wet and dry stack storage. The dry stack is was at the Everett Marina. The wet stack storage is at the Edmonds Marina, and the difference basically is, do you have a structure over it that keeps it dry, or do you leave the boats out in the open on the stack? Fascinating, good way to look at, lots for us to consider about that. It was myself, Mayor Buxton, of course, Councilmember Harris, who set it all up, and Bill and Patty Linscott were with us, and really appreciative of that. I attended the What's Up Des Moines event. I think it was a week ago Tuesday, down at the Quarter Deck, which was really just a fantastic event. Lots of local businesses were in attendance. Most of the restaurants made some kind of contribution to it. Two brand new businesses. There's a florist that is coming in the alley behind the theater, which is going to get a name sometime very soon. And secondly, and this was a unique idea, it's a family-friendly tattoo artist. They have even a playpen to put the child in while you're getting your tattoo work done. It was just a fascinating concept, and totally not in line with what I envision for tattoo parlors. And so, by all accounts, they do really, really nice work, and the 2 ladies that are running it are just really nice people. You've heard about the PIC meeting, but also there was a deputy mayor's meeting with the Sound Cities Association. One event that I want to bring to everybody's attention is tonight is Wesley Des Moines' 80th anniversary in this town. And they are having a celebration in conflict with the city council meeting, of all things. And I hate it when we miss out on a good party. But congratulations to Wesley. Tomorrow, another event is happening, which several people at the south end of town have been waiting for a long time. The grand reopening of the 7-Eleven at 260th and Pack Highway, finally, is going to be reopened. It's been remodeled. It's ready to go. Please stop by and patronize that to make sure they can keep going on that. You also heard that there are a number of events, and I do want to emphasize the Juneteenth event next Wednesday. On June 19th at Creole Soul. I think it is important to recognize the importance of that day in the life of African Americans in this country. It's really a very significant thing when the slaves finally knew that they were free, and that's essentially what the day is celebrating. So That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, appreciate that. So, yeah, I, haven't been here for a little bit. I was sick last week, and so I guess I could open with a grand thanks again to my colleagues for covering for me. And as you can tell, I do sound a little bit like a different person today, but getting better every day. So I really appreciate, and it was short notice for them, so they did a bang-up job last week. Appreciated that. And let's see, so just a couple of highlights, though. I enjoyed a myriad of people, businesses, and events, though, over the last month. It's been really a fun month. But a highlight, really, for me, was a specific event I went to last Saturday. It was, and I would say, just to open in that, I gave a couple remarks, and one of the things I said is, when I'm done with this tour of being mayor, if somebody says about me, she built bridges, she was a good bridge builder, that would be the highest compliment. It's one of my main goals. And so that event was a fundraiser for that put on by the Legacy Foundation. And in that event, it was pretty sweet. Oh, I didn't think I could have brought that. We are partnering with Legacy. They donated a $25,000 segment to the playground at the field house. So it's a renewed partnership. Appreciate that from them. And great event. And Councilmember Grace Matsui and Councilmember Oxker, who's no longer here, were both at that event. And let's see, moving forward to things coming up. Deputy Mayor Steinmetz, I think, mentioned the farmer's market. If not, the farmer's market is now open. We did a ribbon cutting on opening day. Hope to see you all there on Saturdays during the summer. It's going to be great fun. Don't forget, Park Run, free 5K every Saturday all over the world, including the beach park. Touch a Truck is at Stephen J. Underwood at 10 a.m. on Saturday. Yes.
That was postponed.
It was postponed.
We're announcing that on Facebook and everywhere. There's
Oh, you
weather
are?
issues, so.
Oh, well, I haven't seen the media today. Thank you. Disregard. But next weekend, rain or shine, build an event that's building in notoriety just in our hyper-local region here is Men in Black Birthday Bash. That's next weekend. There are a few tickets left. Check it out online. Okay, well, 2 important days are coming up in the next week, and one is Juneteenth and one is Father's Day. So I guess what I'd like to say about those is I hope we can all take a few moments to recognize and appreciate a few special people on these days. Call, write, text, email, send a meme, send some love, or better yet, make an opportunity to give a hug. I'm going to write a special note to somebody who kind of was like a granddad to my kids a long time ago, and I haven't been in touch, but they're in California now, so I'm going to do that. So hope you all get an opportunity for that. This concludes our meeting for the evening, and our next meeting date will be June 27th, 2024, a regular city council business meeting. Please remember to pick up after yourself on the way out, up here and down there. So, Councilmember Grace Matsui, would you like to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
And it is seconded by Deputy Mayor Steinmetz. All in favor? 6-0. Thank you, and we are adjourned.